Hi guys, today I'd like you to meet Doodle Fadoodle. She's a new addition to the Webkinz collection for October, and as you can see she has these really neat decorations and writing on her body as if you doodled on her with cool, happy, love, and smile. She has these really soft wings along with a soft body, also some colorful ribbons on her head and her tail. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make this 3D Doodle Fadoodle, and you're going to need about 106 rubber bands. So let's get started. Let's make the eyes, and it'll be really quick. I'm using ocean blue, looping a single band 4 times on your hook, looping another single band 4 times on our hook. And now we'll put it on a single white band, pulling the 4 loops onto a single white band for both eyes, and put it aside for later. Let's make the beak, taking a single pink band, loop it from the second peg from the bottom, twist to the left, creating an X over the first peg from the bottom, twist to the right, and looping one side onto the second peg from the bottom, like that. Twist to the right again, and looping that band over the second peg from the bottom. And you should have 2 loops on top and the X on the bottom. Now on the left side of your loom, pulling the bottom band up and over to the center, then reaching on the other side, pulling the bottom band up and over to the center, creating that knot in the middle. And take it off your loom very carefully. Taking a single orange, twist, double, and pulling that band onto the single we doubled and center it. So that's our beak so far. Taking a single, twist, double, and pulling all the loops onto the second orange we doubled. Now taking a single white, twist, double it, and pulling all those loops onto the single white band that we doubled. So that's what it should look like. Now let's make the feet. Taking a single orange band, we're going to loop it 4 times on a hook. Taking another orange, looping it 4 times on our hook. Taking a single orange, twist, double, and we're going to pull all those loops onto the orange we doubled and getting it onto our hook, like that. Taking a single pink and pulling all those loops onto the single pink band. And that's our feet. I already made one, so go ahead and pause the video to make your second one. Now let's make the wing. I already made one, so you'll have to pause the video to make the second one. Starting with white, I'm taking a single white, looping it from the first to the second peg on the loom, with teal from the second to the third, and coming diagonally from the second to the third center peg, and again diagonally from the third to the fourth center. Closing it off with a single teal, and coming down one more from the 4th to the 5th center peg with a single teal. That's what yours should look like, and you can make your wing whatever color you want. Taking another single teal, and we're looping it 4 times on the end peg, capping it off. So that's what it should look like. Now take a single band, twist, double, and we're putting it diagonally from the 3rd side to the 3rd center as a holding band. Now go under the cap band, grab the bottom single and very carefully loop up and onto itself, creating the teardrop. Go to the 4th center peg, grabbing the top single, loop up and onto itself, creating the teardrop. And continue to the side and looping up the center, always grabbing the bottom single. And if there's any tension, release it by following your hook around the peg. And continue up your loom, creating the nice teardrops. And now the last band, grabbing the single white, looping up onto the side 1st peg. And let's very carefully take it off our loom and make sure our bands are even. Even it out. So there are my wings. So go ahead and pause your video and make the second one and come back when you're done. With our beak on our hook like that, we're going to grab the 2 loops off of one side and loop it on the right 1st peg, twist in the center and loop the other side onto the center 2nd peg. So our beak is on, taking another single white band, twist, double, and we're going to loop it from the 1st center, twist, and loop it on the 2nd right peg. So that's what yours should look like. Taking a single white band, and we're going to cover the 4 pegs and loop the bottom 2 bands up and over to the center for all 4 pegs. And you should have 2 loops left per peg. Push everything down. That was row number 2. Row number 3, we'll add our eyes, getting our eyes and looping it from the 1st to the 2nd peg in the center and the 1st and 2nd peg on the right. Taking a single band, covering from the center 1st to the right 1st, and our last single band from the 2nd center to the right 2nd peg. So that's what it should look like. Let's tie the first set of ribbons on a Doodle Fadoodle's head, and I'm going to tie it on the single band that's looped around the 1st center to the right 1st peg. So putting a hook under from the inside out, grabbing the 2 loops onto our hook, and then just pulling one over the other to tie a slip knot, and pull it tightly to cinch it off like that. Now go under, grabbing the bottom 2 bands and loop up and over to the center for all 4 pegs. Push it down, and we want to see 2 loops left per peg. So that was row number 3. Row number 4, we're taking 2 single white bands and looping it on all 4 pegs. Like that. Now taking our second set of ribbons, I'm using teal and yellow, and I'm tying it on this band here between the 1st right peg and the center 1st peg. So once again, putting a hook from the inside out, grabbing the 2 bands, getting them onto our hook, and pulling the loops to cinch it off. Pull it tightly, and we're going to loop the bottom 2 bands up and over to the center for all 4 pegs. Push it down, and you should have 2 loops left per peg. So that was row number 4. Rows 5 through 8, we're taking 2 single bands to cover the 4 pegs, and then looping the bottom 2 bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left per peg. And I'm going to fast forward because it's pretty repetitive. So that was 5. I'm doing 6, 7, and 8 the same way. And I'll be back when I'm done with row number 8. So that was row number 8. Row number 9, we're taking a single, twist, double, and we'll do that 4 times to cover all 4 pegs. So single, twist, double. Now we're going to go under, grabbing only the bottom 2 loops, and loop it up and over to the center, and you should have 4 loops left per peg. So go around all 4 pegs, looping the bottom 2 bands up and over, leaving 4 loops per peg. Push it down. That was row number 9. We're going to expand. We're going to pull these 4 loops off of the center second peg, and we're going to pull it to the left second peg. It's tight, so very carefully pull it over. Now pull a single loop off the first center that's attached to the right first and looping it onto the left first peg. Pull the top 2 loops off of the center first peg, and I see it's attached to the second left peg, and I don't want that one, so I'm going to hold it on my hook, grabbing the other 2 loops off of the center first, and it's attached to the right first, and we're moving those 2 loops onto the left first peg, like that, and then reattaching the 2 other loops that's on the hook back onto the first center peg. Repeat for this one, grabbing the top 2 loops that's attached to the right first peg and moving it to the center third. So grabbing the top 2 loops, and it's attached to the right first peg, so I'm moving it to the center third peg. So that's what yours should look like. Only these 2 pegs, the right first and the left second, has 4 loops, and these have 2. Row 10, we're going to take 2 pink bands for the belly and looping it from the first left to the second and from the second to the center third. And for the rest, we're taking a single band, a single white band, and covering the rest of the 6 pegs. And let's loop the bottom bands up and over. The first left should have 2, so loop those up and over to the center, leaving 2 loops per peg. The second left should have 4, looping all those 4 bands up to the center, leaving 2 loops per peg. Continue around, 2 loops over to the center, leaving 2 loops, and this one also has 2 loops, looping it up and over to the center. The first to right should have 4 loops, looping it up and over, leaving 2 loops per peg, and the top center first peg should have 2 loops, up and over, leaving 2 loops. Let's expand before we go to row number 11. We're going to pull these 2 loops off of the center third and moving it to the center fourth peg. Now we're grabbing a single band off of the second right peg that's attached to the first and moving it to the third. So grabbing the top single loop, check to make sure it's attached to the first, and this one isn't, so I'm putting it aside. Grabbing this other loop off, it's attached to the first, moving it to the third, and reattaching this loop back onto the second left peg. So the second has 1 loop and the third has 1 loop. And I'm going to move this single pink band to the second left peg because I don't want too many colors on my belly. So I'm going to pull the top loop off, the white loop, off of the first left peg, hold it, grabbing the pink loop and pulling it and attaching it to the second left peg. So now the second left peg has 2 loops, and reattaching the white band onto the first left peg. Let's repeat on the right side. We're going to pull the top loop off, check to make sure it's attached to the first right peg, and it is, and I'm moving it to the third. And that's all we're going to do for the right side. Row number 11, we're going to add the wings, and we'll loop it on the first left peg to the first center peg for our first wing. Our second wing, we're going to loop it on the third right peg to the second right peg, taking a single white band and covering the rest of our 8 pegs around our loom, and loop up the bottom bands. So the first left peg has a single loop. Loop that up and over to the center, leaving 2 loops per peg. So the second left peg has 2 loops. Loop that up and over, leaving 2 loops. The third has a single. Loop that up and over, leaving 2 loops. We want to leave 2 loops left per peg. So the center fourth, we're looping up 2 bands from the bottom, up and over. The right third has a single loop, the fourth a single. Once again, we want to make sure we have 2 loops left per peg, just going around your loom. Push it down. That was row number 11. Row 12, we're going to add the feet. Taking our feet, and we're looping it on the left side, left second to the left third peg on your loom. Push the bottom bands down, and our second foot, we're adding it to the left third to the center fourth peg. So there's our feet, and with a single white band we're going to cover the rest of our 8 pegs. And then looping the bottom 2 bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left per peg. There should only be 2 loops to pull up and over to the center, and once again you should have 2 loops left per peg for all 8 pegs. Push everything down. That was row number 12. Rows 13, 14, and 15, we're just going to take a single white band, 8 of them, covering the 8 pegs, and then looping the bottom 2 bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left per peg. And it's pretty repetitive. You're just going to loop the bottom 2 bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left per peg. So I'm going to fast forward through rows 13, 14, and 15 and come back when I'm done with the last row. So that was row number 15. Now we're going to take the loops off of each peg, 8 of them. There should be 2 loops per peg going around clockwise around our loom. All the loops onto a hook. So let's stuff her, and I'm going to only use pink bands because her belly's kind of see-through on the front there. So taking your bands and pushing it inside her belly. Now taking a single white band, and we're going to pull all those loops off of our hook and onto our single white band. And let's tie it off in a slip knot and spread the bands out inside her belly. Make sure it doesn't show. And flatten out her body so it's not round, not totally round. So there she is. Fix her wings so it flops to the side, and fix her neck and make sure her beak's pointing down. So now let's add the tail, taking 2 single white band, twist double, and we're going to put our hook through the loops near her bottom, right there, so it's straight down her back. And I have 4 loops on my hook, grabbing the 2 single bands we doubled and pulling all those loops off of our hook and onto the 2 single we doubled. So that's what it should look like. Now taking our slip knot band, getting the loop on our hook, putting a finger to help, and pulling all those loops off of our hook and onto the slip knot band. So there's our tail. Go to the other side where a slip knot band is, getting it on our hook and grabbing the end of our slip knot band and tie it off. And you can tie it one more time if you want, just in case our slip knot band comes off. And let's tuck it in. And now let's add the tail ribbons. First we're going to take our red, violet, and orange and finding the 2 loops on the back of our tail, just anywhere on the top, like that, getting our pink and orange, and we're going to tie a slip knot, getting it onto a hook and looping it through and cinching it off. There's the first 2 set of ribbons. Let's do the next 2 right behind that first set, pulling some bands onto our hook like that. And you can pull any that you want, and getting our yellow and teal, or whatever color you're using for your ribbon feathers, and getting it onto a hook and tying it off. So those are our tail ribbons. So there she is. Fix her eyes so it looks right for you. If you want to cut the ribbons for your Doodle Fadoodle, then you can, to match the plush like this one, but I didn't for this little guy. Also, I stuffed a pipe cleaner in the neck of this one, so that way I can shape it to the way that I want her to look. You can take a marker and doodle on the body if you want to match the plush Doodle Fadoodle. I hope you like it. Thanks for watching.